Alright, so if you're looking at getting your first bike, I've got a few tips for you. These are not riding tips, although I can make a video about that in the future. These are simply tips for selecting your first motorcycle. There's obviously all sorts of bikes, and they're all a ton of fun. They just all have different purposes. The first tip that I have, and it's something that sounds super obvious, but it's honestly something that I failed to do when I bought my first motorcycle, and that is to get what you like. You know, what kind of riding do you want to do? Do you want to go fast? Do you want a sport bike? Do you want to be more comfortable, ride a cruiser? Do you want to ride exclusively off-road on a dirt bike? Do you want an adventure bike? Do you want an enduro? You know, do you want something set up more for long distance rides? Do you want a touring bike, a sports touring bike? You know, when you are looking at motorcycles, what do you picture yourself wanting to ride? What do you see yourself riding on? You know, when I bought my first motorcycle, I honestly really wanted a sport bike. I really wanted like a Ninja 300 or Ninja 650, something like that. But when I was looking at them, I had some friends who were trying to talk me into getting dirt bikes. They're saying, dude, you need a dirt bike so you have something to ride when we all go out the canyon. And so instead of getting, you know, a little Ninja to learn on for my first bike, I kind of made a compromise with them, and I got a KLR 650. So kind of a enduro, kind of like a baby adventure bike, something that can go on and off-road. And it's a cool bike. You know, the KLR kind of has a cool bike following on the internet, but I quickly learned that it just wasn't set up for the type of riding that I wanted to do. I took it off-road a couple times, and I just realized that for me it seemed like the worst of both worlds, especially as a new rider. I definitely was not very confident in the dirt, and it didn't go fast enough for me on the street. I mean, it was a decent bike to learn riding on, but you know, looking back, I wish I would have got something that I originally wanted to. My next bike after that KLR was a sport bike. I got a GSX S 750. But you got to think about, you know, what kind of bike you like. And it's okay to want to get a sport bike. You know, when you tell people you're getting your first motorcycle and you're telling them you're looking at sport bikes, they say, oh, are you going to get a cross shock? You're going to kill yourself on that. And you're not. Unless your first bike is going to be a CBR 1000. Just had a buddy who told me his friend was learning how to ride on his Bolt, his Yamaha Bolt, and went out for a ride and he wrecked it. And then less than a week later, he's looking at getting his own first bike after wrecking his buddy's, and he's looking at a 2022 CBR 1000. He's not even going to know what to do with that bike. I wouldn't know what to do with a bike with that much power. If you picture yourself, you know, wanting to go on longer rides, being more comfortable, just relaxed rides, then get a cruiser. If you see yourself as a rider who's going to dress up as something between a Boy Scout and a pirate, then, you know, go get a Harley and you can do all the leather and bandanas and all the patches you want. Now, my second tip is something that I feel like a lot of people forget about when they're looking at getting their own first motorcycle, and that is to account for gear. So if you've got it budgeted to where you can spend $4,000 on getting a motorcycle, I would suggest you find a motorcycle that's $3,000 or less, so you have $1,000 to spare for gear. Get yourself a nice helmet, nice gloves, some pants, a jacket. I've even got a couple pairs of riding shoes. I have tons of gear. But you don't want to put yourself in a financial situation where you have to skimp out on gear. Now for my third tip, I would say get a bike that you are prepared to drop. I'm not saying you're going to get into a gnarly wreck and total your shit, send yourself to the hospital. But if it's your first bike and you are just learning how to ride, I promise you, you will tip that bike over at some point. If you're just learning how to ride, you'll tip it over in your garage or your driveway, you'll hop off and you'll forget to put the kickstand down. If you're learning how to ride and you're in a parking lot or something, you'll probably kill it and tip it over. So for your first bike, I really don't recommend getting something brand new that you're going to be upset about if it gets a couple scratches on it. I'm not saying you can't get something nice and something that you'll take care of. I'm just saying be mentally prepared to get a couple scratches, get a couple dings on your first bike. My fourth tip for selecting your first motorcycle is to be open-minded. You know, when I like something, I tend to hyper-fixate on stuff, and you know, I really only focus on that one thing instead of considering other things that are similar to it. So you can do all the research you want, you can find what looks like the perfect bike on paper for you, and then you can get it and, you know, it's not what you thought it was. Or you can get something and what you thought you liked, you don't like anymore. You know, for example, my first sport bike, that GSXS 750 naked bike, I liked how comfortable it was. I thought, man, naked bikes are the best, dude. You sit up a lot more, way more comfortable. You still have the speed and the power. But then I learned that I kind of wanted a little more wind protection, so I got a full fairing sport bike, so I was able to tuck and have some extra wind protection, so I didn't just get hammered on the highway. And when I say be open-minded, I mean there's all types of different motorcycles, and they all are going to be a ton of fun, but they all have pros and cons to them. You know, I get it, your dad and your grandpa and your dad's boyfriend all have Harleys, and so that's what you want. But just know there's other bikes out there besides Harleys that are going to be cheaper, make more power, and be just as, if not more fun. Your taste will change over time. The more bikes you ride, you know, the more appreciation for them all that you'll have. I went from that KLR 650, so I had an enduro bike, to that GSXS 750, I had a naked bike. Then I picked up an 04 Victory Vegas, so that was my first cruiser. Then I got a 2017 ZX6R, so a full fairing sport bike. Got a 2012 Highball, and then I got this 2016 cross country. So I've had, you know, almost every kind of bike you can have, and they're all a ton of fun, but they're just all different. And my tastes have changed over time. I used to think cruisers were dumb. I thought I would never get a cruiser. I thought they're heavy, they're slow. You know, who wants an air-cooled bike in the summer in traffic? You know, I used to think something like this cross country was a total grandpa bike, dude. Now that I have it, I absolutely love it. And that all brings me to my fifth and my last point. And that's, remember that, you know, these motorcycles aren't forever. It's not a forever item. Motorcycles are rarely anybody's primary mode of transportation. They're typically a luxury item. It's not like buying a house or getting married. You don't need to nail it on your first one. You even need to nail it on your first marriage. As you ride more, just keep track of the things you like and don't like about your bike, and you'll have more information to make a decision when you're looking at your next bike. In the 5-6 years that I've been riding, I've already owned 6 motorcycles myself. Now I do have a problem. I am financially irresponsible. I'm not saying you're going to be like that, but I'm just saying you don't need to try and hit a home run and find something that you're going to keep forever on your first motorcycle. Your tastes will change, technology will change, and new bikes will become available. Got a little accident or something up here. This cop is literally giving that guy directions to turn left while giving us directions to go straight. So to recap the 5 tips for getting your first motorcycle. Number 1, we've got to get what you like. Get something that you see yourself riding that feels comfortable when you sit on it, not too heavy, not too much power. Number 2, account for gear. Take gear into consideration when you're coming up with a budget for your first motorcycle. Number 3, prepare to drop it, prepare to tip it over. I'm not saying you're going to get into a huge crash, but I guarantee you, if you're learning how to ride on your first bike, you will tip it over at some point. Number 4, be open-minded. Be open-minded in your search for your first bike, and be open-minded in your search for bikes going forward. You know, if you're at least open-minded enough to try riding a bunch of different bikes, or, you know, at least sitting on and checking out some different bikes, chances are you're going to find something that'll fit you really well, and you'll find something that you really enjoy. And number 5, remember that your first bike doesn't have to be your forever bike. You'll get other motorcycles after that. Keep track of your likes and your dislikes. And just remember that there's always going to be other bikes out there. So if you have something you really hate about the bike you have, just remember you can always sell it in the future and look for a different one. So if you're looking at getting your first motorcycle, I hope this video helped. These are just some things that I wish I would have thought more about when I got my first bike. Ride safe, everybody.